Hello, everyone. Welcome. Can you hear me okay? A little bit? Any better? That sounds a little bit better? Yes. Okay. Thanks, Anne. I'm Jefferson Nowicki. I'm a board member at Millay House Rockland, and on behalf of my fellow board members and my honor collaborating partner, Rockland Public Library, I'd like to welcome you to Conversation of the Century. It's a great title for an event, by the way. On my drive up here, I was thinking about an acronym, WWESVMD. WWESVMD.
I love it.
What would Edna St. Vincent Millay do? As people who create literary programming in the house right here in Rockland where Millay was born, we think of that stuff all the time, but I was particularly thinking of it in this moment, in this contemporary moment. What would Millay think of the atrocities that are going on in the world? What would Millay think of trying to think of the phrase, and really the only thing that comes to my head is utter bullshit that the current administration is trying to pull. What would she think of that? And of course, she was working 100 years ago, so we don't really know, but there are some things that we do know. And one of them is that Edna St. Vincent Millay did not suffer fools, and she had no problem speaking truth to power. She protested her beliefs. She was arrested for those protests. She used the power of her pen, the power of her poetry, the power of her fame to inform the American people about the issues that she thought was important. And particularly, I'm thinking of an example that is not so political, but shows the power of her will. In the 1940s, she was invited to be a chancellor at the Academy of American Poets, which is a pretty big deal. And the only things that the Academy asked was that all the chancellors drop their other gigs while they were a chancellor, and then in exchange they would get kind of a hefty salary for the years that they were going to be chancellors. And Millay, this was a time where Millay, a time of her life where she could have used the steady salary. She did amazingly well, but she would write best-selling poetry books, which who does that? Who can still do that? She did it multiple times. So she would write best-selling poetry books, make a lot of money, spend all of it, and then have to write another best-selling poetry book, make a lot of money, spend all of it, and there you can see the cycle, which is pretty exhausting especially for a poet. So she could have used this steady income, but she refused them. She flat out refused that offer because she didn't like that you had to give up all your gigs, and she didn't like the way that they asked her. And all of her poet friends, who were, by the way, a little bit jealous, and they were like, "What are you doing?" Like, nobody turns down the Academy of American Poets, but she did it. And one of her poet friends, when she heard what Millay did, she said, "Now that takes some Irish grit." So that's the kind of thing that Millay does. And what would Edna St. Vincent Millay do? I think, for one thing, that she would absolutely love tonight's program. She would be totally thrilled that her poem has inspired work from all of you. And that's the kind of thing that she would have totally loved. And she would have been really curious. I'm saying this with some kind of authority, I really don't know. But I think that she would be so curious to see what you all came up with, which I am really curious to see. And I have been following the Trans Poetic Archive for quite a while because I know that it would have been perfect for Millay House Rockland to do some kind of event. So when I contacted poet and archivist T. Love Smith to see if they might want to do some collaboration with Millay House Rockland, they wrote back, "How about we do an event called Conversation of the Century where Maine trans poets respond to Millay's poem, I Being Born Woman and Distressed." I was like, yes, that sounds incredible. And sometimes you throw out an idea and it comes back way better than you could have ever imagined. So I'm going to read some bios of the participating poets tonight, and then I'm going to turn it over to T. Maya Williams, A, they, she, is a religious Black multiracial non-binary suicide survivor who was the 7th Poet Laureate of Portland, Maine. Their debut poetry collection, Judas and Suicide, Game Over Books 2023, was selected as a finalist for the New England Book Award. They also have a second poetry collection, Refused a Second Date, Harbor Editions 2023, which was a finalist for the Maine Literary Award. Maya was one of 3 artists of color selected to represent Maine in the Kennedy Center Arts Across America series in 2020. Maya was also selected as one of the Advocates Champions of Pride in 2022. Calla Eris Orion, O-Os-Oer, is a mirror in Drost, looking at the world as a reflection of ourselves reflected back on ourselves. O work at a liberal arts college, live with our dog Copper, and enjoy solitude. O attended the Stone Coast MFA program in creative writing and were recently published by Many Worlds. Lonny Saleeby has spent their adult life on a trajectory of community care. They started in death work with an expertise in memory care before moving towards the care of children, adolescents, animals, and plants. They spent their time stewarding their garden, loving their dog and friends, and seeing the needs of a herd of 22 goats in a school of 50 preschoolers. They are a visual artist, a poet, and a healer. Violet Ferlito, they, is a multidisciplinary artist currently focusing on writing and performance art that centers her experience as a queer and trans woman. Originally from the capital region of New York, she has lived in Maine for around 3 years. Most recently, she has performed with the Waldo Theater in its production of The Vagina Monologues, and 2 Cent Theater's productions of Do You Feel Anger? She is thrilled to be collaborating with the Trans Poetic Archive, especially during a time in which trans folk and other marginalized communities are under attack. Beyond her work as an artist, Violet has practiced a variety of martial arts for over a decade and is an avid gamer and all-around nerd. T. Love Smith, them, is a queer poet stewarding unceded Wabanaki land, studying poetry at Stone Coast MFA, reading for the Stone Coast Review, interning at the Telling Room, and creating content at WMPG. Reading as an assistant poetry editor of the Stone Coast Review. As a Grow Scholar, T is curating a series of events for the Trans Poetic Archive, which includes Monster Beauties, a Maine transgender poetry anthology, which they brought with them over here, which I am definitely buying today. Their poetry has been published in New Words Press, Volume 3, Island Inc., Issue 2, Oddball Magazine, The Free Press, as well as presented on local radio podcasts, Transgender Poetics on WMPG, and Poems from Here on Maine Public Radio.
Okay. Thank you, Jefferson. Thank you to everyone who made it possible for us to be here. I actually was going to read the poem, but I think I want to offer it out to the audience to participate if you're interested. If there's a cis gendered feminist in the house that would like to read the poem. It's okay. I can read it if nobody wants to. Yes.
Ooh!
Everybody give it up for Kristen. Thank you.
I do not know this poem.
That's okay.
I, Being Born a Woman and Distressed by Edna St. Vincent Millay. I, being born a woman and distressed by all the needs and notions of my kind, am urged by your propinquity to find your person fair, and feel a certain zest to bear your body's weight upon my breast. So subtly is the fume of life designed to clarify the pulse and cloud the mind, and leave me once again undone, possessed. Think not for this, however, the poor treason of my stout blood against my staggering brain. I shall remember you with love, or season my scorn with pity. Let me make it plain. I find this frenzy insufficient reason for conversation when we meet again.
Give it up one more time for Kristen Kearns. Thank you. So we're gonna read our responses now in the order. If you look at your program, we're just gonna go in that order. So coming up next, put your hands together for Maya Williams.
Thank you so much. Reading Feminine Morbidity, and this poem would not exist without the likes of Ian Cara, Elisante, and Ariel Maroon. I only trust Black people to call me girl. I feel funny when cisgender Black women see me as one. Not ha ha funny. They broke my trust. I only trust Black women to use girl spelled with an X. I feel funny when turfy white women co-opt it for their gain. They claim a biting independent truth they preach on a binary Sunday. Not ha ha funny. Multiply my name and see often misgendering me equals their evangelizing. I once called my transness a funeral for my cisgender girlhood in a poem. My gender is conjuring morbid like the zombie god I still believe in. My sister hates it when I write about God like this, but God gives me permission to. I am the God in human flesh who solves mystery of transcendence and femininity, because I am this miracle. What now, I ask myself? Can't we do something more with this feminine existence? Can't we do something more with this Black feminine existence? Is my existence ha ha funny yet? Thank you.
One more time for Maya Williams. Coming up next, give it up for Violet.
Here we go. Maya, you just reminded me, so small shout out to my dog Zephyr, who was my rubber ducky throughout all of this and got to hear many versions of this. This piece is titled A Wednesday. You fondle and praise, spit, spit, stomp. I am to be your romp, to care and nurture. Not like that, not within sight of the impressionable. I am a cryptid, unknowable, prodded, litigated, desirable. Sprawled out on the frigid examining table, you flinch at the shattering of eggshells beneath your feet, the shells you placed. How to hold and cherish me desecrated. Will you still ogle me when my belly dangles over my waistband, when my tits look smaller by comparison? You tell me I'm brave, my perception invaluable, but you don't hire me. You're threatened by me? Messy. Caress my hair, pull my hair. Pretty, too pretty. Incinerated under Damocles's magnifying glass. Breaches of joy are hoarse. My rage will be coarse. Maybe titillating, and funnily enough, intoxicating. Thank you.
A little bit louder for Violet. And keep it going for Lonny.
I wrote mine in 3 parts, so it's a little long. I, being born human and distressed by bodily need and forbearance, quenched, lucid, and unfulfilled, a being not yet wholly a god, reaching deeply past time and circumstance to gain, however trivial and mundane, a fruit grown in neither time nor space, a craving for limblessness and forever, hurled seemingly without conscience into the vibrancy of my own life. Agency known and unknown to self and other, brought out of the ground and offered to the ground, born in dirt, of dirt, leaking seaward, back to and with infinite self and oneness, poor in flesh and rich in consciousness, a drop being touched and engulfed by all other drops does not cease to be whole. I, being born a baby and distressed, a collapsed star scrunched and solidified, sprouting from a warm, bloodied wound assaulted by hunger and brightness, a wail wrapped around all bodies in the room, bodies deemed me alive and human, labeling my place and worth and well-being by classification of reproductive organ, my being too large to fit, too seemingly kaleidoscopic, leaking the seam of required simplicity. Here, we do not have words to describe the sensation of infinity crammed into infancy. If this body were to represent all time and universal energy, cocooned into a temporary vessel of needs, here I am, being and unbeing, holding in one hand the freedom of the temporary and in the other constraints of flesh, hurled into the vibrancy of my own life. I am learning to hold worlds at the tip of each finger, to balance longing and excess, to fast and fill in equal measures, spinning beauty from relentlessness and watching desire live in the moment as densely as life demands. I, being born human, I, being born electric pulse, I am one thought shifting to another. I am a match to a wick becoming ash. I am born human. I am born fire. I am born electric pulse. I am born lightning. I am born storm. I am born hot.
Yes, okay. Couple more poems for y'all. All right. One more time for Lonny though. That was fire, as we say. Keep it going for Calla.
Oh, that's right here. I had it on my phone too. Thanks, T. We being born, a man and distressed, body a mess and made to divide the right side with the left side so that one goes this way, the other that way, the opposite of what you'd expect. We wish they'd left well enough alone and hadn't birthed a man in distress. Instead could have put a thick stroke X where an M as tradition was placed. There's no way to know what kind of mess he'll do to a man deep in distress. By giving no choice for who to be, we being born a he could as well had done better not living that hell.
Finally. Mine. Which is called No Contact. I, being born non-woman, but raised one, young, told what to wear, what to think, reared girl adjacent, washed in the sink. With girls' laundry, the itch of frills and lace, painting paste to lips and under eye. Girls don't spit and cross your legs, echo caught in ear labyrinth for decades. I was not born this way, but raised it, forced to conform or suffer consequences of being the bullseye for the playground bullies, of being left out of clubs for girls and boys, of being left out of sports and extracurriculars. The worst, left out of family reunions. I find fear a pitiful excuse to exclude, envy even more bitter when you hide and can't find yourself in any mirror. I won't pity you for committing treason against your own body through mine. For my lack of empathy, let me make it plain. I find your betrayal sufficient reason not to puff air with you again. Weird, like, we're kind of like in this line over here, so I feel like I can't, I might move around a little bit.
Great.
I do have some questions for my friends up here, and then I'm gonna turn it over for some questions. But I wanna look at them. I wanna see their beautiful faces. Look at them. Ah, they're so gorgeous. Look at them. All right, yeah, I feel like Ricky Lake. I'm like Ricky Lake right now. This is fun. I always wanted to do this, but so we're gonna start with your poem, Maya, and your lines in there that I really want to talk about. I want to hear you talk about. Can't we do something more with this feminine existence? Can we do some more with this Black feminine existence? What more? What more can we do?
Yeah, I wrote those lines because I was inspired by Ariel Marie's poetry collection, Gumbo Yaya, and it was based off of and the poem itself was based off of a prompt that Calla Eris Orion gave us writers at the Words of Fire retreat. It's a writing retreat for people of color, of marginalized genders, where they were like, be sure you say the phrase, I am this miracle. So when it comes to the miraculous, I think about what Calla referred to when Calla refers to themselves as gender infinite. I think like, yeah. When I try to think about myself, like even though I was raised by a black cis woman and grew up around black cis women, I'm a Black non-binary person. And so like there's always this conversation about the lineage of what I was raised in, and still give credit to what I was raised in, and at the same time acknowledging like there is a lot more to do with this feminine existence, and it's just a matter of like it's not because of my own internalizing, it's because of cis people's own internalizing, and then they externalize it upon us. And they externalize it to make us believe that our existence isn't worth being present, or our existence isn't worth providing room for, and that's not true. And I use a term. There's an acronym called TERF. It refers to trans exclusionary radical feminists. They're awful. They're racist. They're transphobic. They're evil. And most of the time they tend to be white, not all of them, but most of them. And it's worth calling out those intersections when it comes to the line of like, can't we do something more? Can we make more space? Can I make more space for myself? And also, oftentimes when I've read this poem, right afterwards, there have been people who have said like, wow, what a charming young lady. And I'm like, you didn't hear the poem at all. And that gets frustrating. And at the same time, it's like, well, of course you didn't hear the poem. So I'm gonna let you sit with that as I call you out on like, you didn't hear the poem.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, I would also ask about that too, like that comment about finding ourselves in, finding our place. Come on in. You're welcome. There's more seats in here. Welcome. Come on in. There's cookies. Homemade cookies.
They said I'm just watching.
Okay, no worries. You're good. You can stay right where you are too. I was wondering, because we're speaking to, a poet from the suffrage movement, right? And so like when you're talking about what you just talked about regarding finding our place within that, like, I guess my question would be, if you could talk to this poet, like,
Yeah.
regarding what you're trying to talk about in your poem, like what would be the key thing that you want her to take away?
Yeah, if your feminism is not trans inclusive, it's not feminism. That's what I would say. And I would like to believe that if she were alive today, she would be a trans inclusive feminist. There are many trans inclusive cis women who are doing incredible work, Angela Davis and so much more. But yeah, that would be the main thing I would say. Yeah.
Thank you. Awesome, I agree. double down on that, yes. I'm gonna move to another person and take you out of the hot seat. So.
No, it's been a great seat.
I'm not back to that, I mean, it's gonna be fun. We're gonna have a whole conversation here, but just trying to initiate some stuff and then we can open it up to everybody to get involved with the conversation. But Violet, can you talk to me about this set of lines? You flinch at the shattering of eggshells beneath your feet, the shells you placed.
Yeah, so that kind of comes from a couple of different thoughts. The first being, to the trans people in the audience, the phrase egg or like cracked egg is probably very familiar. To the cis-het people in the audience, that phrase is generally used like someone who isn't out yet is typically referred to as an egg. If you've had your moment where you realize, oh, there might be some gender fucky-wucky stuff going on, then your egg has been cracked. And ever since that, I've been kind of obsessed with the idea of like the shattering of eggs and the shells, especially because of the phrase, like I'm walking on eggshells as well. And I find there's a nice little thematic corollary there. And that has been tumbling around in my head for a long time. So I finally found a good framing device for it in this particular poem. And when it comes to like the intentional like placement of the shells itself, is I've found with interactions with strangers, friends, family members, like whatever it may be, that the awkwardness that comes up in just interacting with me as a trans person, you know, and this might be like a cis-het person, they're the ones making it awkward. Like,
Right.
I kind of just want to be talking about, I don't know, like my favorite drink, or like, again, in my bio, I reference someone nerd. I'm like, hey, I just want to maybe be talking about a TV show with you, and you're making this really awkward right now, and you kind of keep staring at my chest, and like, that's a little weird.
Right.
So that is kind of how those different pieces kind of came together in my own head. I also like this idea of when your egg cracks, when it shatters, those are still sharp edges, and that creates not necessarily wounds, but it's not necessarily always the smoothest process either. So using that kind of theming of jaggedness, especially in a society as a whole that doesn't necessarily want you to be doing that, that makes that process jagged.
Thank you so much. When I read it, I was thinking about that, just how like the idea of the eggshells being placed and like the idea of walking on eggshells and how people sort of react to me anyway, wherever I go, they're kind of like act like they're walking on eggshells around me.
Yeah.
Regarding my gender. And I loved it. I loved that line because I was like, yeah, like I didn't put those shells there, you know, like why are you acting like that and mad at me about it?
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
even put those shells there.
Yeah,
So,
like I feel so often it's like then placed upon you to like explain everything about your gender.
yeah.
And it's like, that's not a normal conversation you have with people just in passing. Like maybe after a little while, who knows?
Right. Thank you.
Also, cisgender people have their own gender identity to process. They just
They
don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the interrogation isn't necessarily always there.
Right.
And so then you realize, oh, we're on very different pages of this book right now in terms of how we understand and interact with gender. And then a lot of times that, I guess, educational piece or supporting piece then gets placed upon like a trans or gender diverse person who doesn't necessarily want to be doing that lifting for the stranger or this loved one, whoever it may be, because resources are available, you know?
Excellent. Okay, so Lonny, you had so many powerful lines in your poem, and actually I had part of it. I didn't have the whole thing.
I know, I
and it wasn't done.
You have more stuff. I like it. It's good. I love that. I don't think our poems necessarily are ever done, so it's great that you continued working on it. So I heard more lines that I love, but the one that really stood out to me from the original, and you read it again today, and I lost my mind again because it's such a potent statement, I find. You say, I don't know if you changed this line, so you might have, but I said, here we do not have the words to describe the sensation of infinity crammed into infancy. Oh my gosh, saying so much in that line. You're saying so much in it, but I'd love to hear what you're thinking about what you're saying, because I'm hearing a whole bunch of stuff. I absolutely will. Here, we do not have the words to describe the sensation of infinity crammed into infancy.
I mean, that's what I'm saying, that you can't describe it. I feel like doing death work and also taking care of fresh babies, there is like this sort of flattened circle. And I think that I don't really believe in time the way that it's structured in our lives. And I feel like I made up a word in that poem, kaleidoscopic. I don't think it's an actual word, but I was like,
It's a word.
Is it?
You put it on the page, it's a
Because I
word.
needed it. I was like, this, if it doesn't exist, it should. And it's kind of that reality that, yes, we're always moving, but that movement is like part of all these patterns. And it's like, you know, when we're thinking about genetics, which is what everyone wants to talk about when it comes to trans people, it seems like, there's no, like, I really wish I could remember the name of this comic, but I saw a little clip of a joke, I think on Instagram, and this comic says, yeah, you know, when people ask me about my gender, I tell them I'm a man on my dad's side and a woman on my mom's side, and I'm just like, yes, like there's this, you know, like I don't need to get into reincarnation with you all, I mean, you know, it's like, yeah, but I don't know. I don't think it's simple as like, you know, you're in this one lifetime and it's the only thing informing who you are and what you do. I think that would be silly to believe. So I think that's kind of what I mean. It's like
brilliant
that
answer.
infinity is in all of us when we join in a body and when we leave it. So that's kind of where I was.
I'll share what I was thinking about. I love your answer way better, but I was thinking in this way of like, you know, when they, and well, this leads beautifully into the stuff I want to talk about with Calla, but it's just how infinity, like your whole life is given to you by this gender assignment, you know, like and yes, you can change your gender, but the society doesn't welcome that. So you're stuck with that assignment infinitely, even if you change it, because look what can happen, what's happening right now. Even if you changed everything, you're getting that stuff like revoked and taken away by our insane, abusive government, you know? So I was thinking it from a perspective of like, now I'm stuck with this assignment infinitely, you know, since birth anyway, until I'm dead. I have to be stuck with this assignment. And I've felt that way in my own existence. I feel it currently, because like, for instance, I don't have access to the kind of gender affirming healthcare that I personally need and desire at this time, especially during this time. So it feels like it can feel like, especially for poor people or other people that don't have the resources to have gender affirming care, it can really feel like a death sentence. And that's why the statistics look like they do. So with that being said, that kind of brings me into talking about your poem, Calla, which to me is a lot about that. It's about that gender assignment, right? And I know you're in an interesting, I don't know if you want to talk about where you're at in your transition, but I know this is an exciting time for you. And so maybe just saying how like, this is sort of like this reclamation for you to be out here talking about this right now, you know, in your lifetime. And I want to say this, that like, I do want to give you some props, because when I went to Stone Coast MFA, I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into. And I thought I was going to be super hetero, cis, and whatever. And even before I got there, somebody told me about you and asked if you would talk to me, and you reached out to me and you emailed me, and I went into a program, which I should give props to Stone Coast because they actually have a lot of trans and non-binary people in the program right now, and we feel comfortable there.
Yep.
Don't we?
Yes,
They're treating us
absolutely.
pretty good over there. I mean, they're not perfect, but they're working on it. So I just wanted to add that component because I think I just kind of pulled you into the project, and I've said that you're at Stone Coast with me, but I haven't said, like our connection. And anyway, I just want to share with the community who you are and how wonderful you are, a person. But back to my question. Cool, and then this is why nobody gave me a microphone. I shouldn't host things. Because I was
No,
you know what? I'll stop
that.
the program and be
No,
like, oh my
wait.
God, Maya, I love you so much. You're amazing. And I'll just do that in the middle of a program because I just love these people, and they don't get
that's
enough
great.
props. Y'all don't get enough props, So anyway, thanks for
Stop
that.
critiquing yourself.
My question for you
Okay.
is, what do you think of like the gender reveal
Oh, gosh. Yeah, that sounds terrible.
excitement?
I mean,
in relation
guess
to
I'd
what
take
you-
the stance of like, how dare you make a decision for somebody else? And like, I mean, the quick and fast answer is like, when children are born with intersex conditions, their gender is decided for them.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that is decided wrong. And so like, that's the quick fast version, but like, it's way more complicated than that too. Like you go out there and people are like me, like, I guess in the poem I described like one foot going one way and the other foot going the other way, but they're like walking into each other. And my entire life up until the point that I started transitioning, it was like I was constantly in my own way. I was constantly an obstacle to myself. Everything I tried to do and everything I tried to be was like wrapped up in this ball of like identity that was sort of blocking me from doing anything. And the minute I started transitioning, it was like, oh, I opened up. I started walking properly for the first time in my entire life. And it was like emotional surgery.
Yes.
So like,
Yes.
yeah, like, I mean, you mentioned it, and yeah, I don't mind talking about it, but I am having bottom surgery in July this year, so it's coming up in less than 2 months. And yeah, it's incredible. It feels overwhelmingly good. I actually don't feel scared at all, and everybody has been telling me that I need to be scared, and I'm like, no, I'm ready for this. And I don't know, it's just like, the fact that we decide it all for children is so absurd because we can't know, and it just doesn't make any sense that we would thrust this entire identity on somebody who doesn't have anything. And I mean, they're still part of the infinite, right? And to bring Lonny into this, but it's just, yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, everybody clap, snap, whatever. This is a great answer. Excellent answers. I'm gonna get the microphone out of my hands and get it into some other people with more intelligent questions. So who has the first next question?
Stop the self-deprecating.
Okay. I thought that was comedy. It's not.
No, it's not funny. Self-deprecation is not funny, T.
And Maya knows because Maya's also a comedian. Y'all don't know this, but an amazing comedian. But who would like to get the first question in? I'm gonna go up here and turn around, and whoever has the hand up's gonna get it. All right, then somebody without their hand's gonna get it.
Wait, Jefferson, put your finger up.
I have a kind of wry question. It's for Lonny. Do you think all babies are fresh?
Fresh?
Yeah.
I mean,
You said it.
I don't know. Their atoms are. They just got cooked up, so.
Oh, I like that.
I did have this stale, fresh thing let off in my head, so I forgive you. And on the way here, in front of French and Brown, a really tall man was carrying something that, like almost football, big loaf of bread thing, and when I came realized it actually was a baby, but he was so like doing his thing and just had this thing, and then thought like for friends. Anyway, unrelated.
Does this work? Wow, it's weird to use a microphone. Thank you so much for all the poems. I really want to hear them again. I love that T pulled out different lines that we could like deepen our understanding. I have a question. I think it's appropriate for this space because I think people touched a little bit about, I think Violet, you spoke a little bit about the idea of not like putting on your, expecting other people to, like having it all on you to explain your gender. And so I have conversations with, my mom's such a curious person and she really comes from this genuine place of wanting to understand people's experiences. And I wonder if any of you have thoughts about how an elder can learn more someone who wants to be respectful and really wants to get it right without being intrusive. Because I think I try to like figure that out with my mom because she is so supportive and really comes from this place that I really want to understand. But I think sometimes she can be a little bit intrusive with her questions, like you were speaking of. So I wonder if there's what you could offer in terms of a balance or what makes you feel more comfortable when someone's trying to learn more about your identity.
I think just as an experience of mine being trans is that trans people love talking about being trans. Like it's fun. I love my identity. I love the people I spend time with. I love my community. Honestly, it's the thing that is the most bothersome is the eagerness to ask a question in the first place. I think if you just sit down, give space, open up, and be ready to receive information, it's more likely to come to you from an honest, genuine place.
Yeah.
And if you try to push for it and you try to reach for it, it's more likely to pull away from you. Our identities are very much maligned by whoever, and we just want to be able to talk about it. We want to be able to be comfortable talking about it. And yeah, I mean, giving us an opportunity is always,
I think what I would also add is, and I know this is a little bit more difficult for an elderly person who, mobility issues and such, but getting out into community spaces, spaces like this, yes, obviously, we're talking about it, but even more so, like, even just here in Rockland with like the galleries that might be going on or exhibitions, like the more you integrate within community, the more likely you're gonna find queerness and transness. And a lot of that information comes to you by proxy, the more that you're interacting with the people in your community. And now granted, that's tough, like if you're not a queer person, a trans person, you're not necessarily geared into those things, but I think that's especially where you might be coming as like a family member or something, doing that support kind of work right there. And, I'd say in particular, like great sources in Maine would be like Maine Transnet, like the Equality Community Center, like these different organizations that tend to, what's the word I'm thinking of? Like, I guess like collect these different events and then try to make them like more like broadly announced. So that would be my particular suggestion, but so that great answer too.
Disclaimers go a long way. Like, I'm more willing to talk to someone who gives me the disclaimer of like, hey, I may not know everything, so please forgive me if I misspeak, rather than someone who's so eager and yet knows all the terminology. And that's just my personal belief. Disclaimers go a long way. And also reminding this elder person that trans elders also exist. I know a lot of us are at a younger age, but there are trans elders who exist, and also the people they're talking to, they're going to become trans elders, so that's something to keep in mind. And and also just reminding them of like, even if you do all the right things, such as disclaimers, such as like asking questions that aren't invasive, you're still not going to get the answer you want, because not everyone's going to want to educate you, and you just have to remind your parent that she needs to be okay with that, and go search on Google if you didn't get the answer from the person that day, because as Violet said earlier, not everyone is going to want to educate you. Not everyone is at capacity to educate you, and that goes for people of a variety of marginalized identities. So.
I think for me, there's like two things that are imperative to like be open to conversation. And I think that's grace. You have to give me grace. If something you say pisses me off and I would like to put the conversation down, I think that's fair.
Exactly.
Give yourself grace if you screw up. Don't make me make you feel better about it.
Thank you.
It's okay. We don't need to, I don't need to coddle you.
Right.
We're both adults. And then mutuality. Be curious about yourself. If you're curious about me, turn it inward too, and I'm happy to meet you in that place. But that goes a long way for me personally.
It's good to ask questions, what you don't know, just ask, but try to be respectful. Imagine, like you would with I hope, anybody you're talking to, you'd think about like, who is this what you know of this person, and how can I put myself in their shoes in a way that they're gonna wanna hear what I have to say? Like, what kind of question how can I ask this in the most respectful way? And you might not know that answer, and that's okay. Say that. I love the disclaimer thing. That's a really good one, because then you're letting people know where you're at. I don't want to repeat, but these are all good answers.
I'm curious how you each came to poetry in your lives and what it does for you in your life.
I can start. I feel like everyone has multi-dimensional selves. We all have parts. We all feel complex emotions. Things are usually not simple. And I feel like originally poetry was a tool to deepen that connection to different stuck parts of myself, be it like different ages or just, usually something that is in my way is how it would start often. It's like something's in my way here, some emotion is in my way. And in order to get through it, I'd have to get curious and kind of invite almost like an internal conversation, and being able to write it out gave me like a secondary place to do it, because it's outside of the self. Whereas if I'm at odds internally, it's disruptive. Whereas if I'm like, okay, well, I'll hear you out here, and then you have to give me time, it's kind of becomes like an internal conversation. And then as I got older and I started sharing poetry, I realized, oh, these are conversations people are also having, or are gaining something intimate from in their own experience. And then I got more into like, what are other people writing, and it snowballed from there. Plus, I love to read poetry, so we mimic what we love. Just love it.
Yeah. I love it too. I've been writing since a very young age, and then it wasn't until like late high school, early college, I started to perform it more regularly as a spoken word poet. I competed in slam competitions throughout my undergrad and college, and a little bit in grad school. But then I didn't start publishing poetry until a little bit after that. I love going to open mics. I run an open mic series on Tuesday nights, so I love gathering with fellow poets. I love engaging in events like these. I like getting asked to facilitate poetry workshops, just so it's a great excuse to nerd out over my favorite poets.
Yeah. Oh, you should plug your thing that's coming up, your series.
Oh
Speaking
yeah,
of-
on Thursdays at Maine Transnet from 2 p.m. to 3:30, I run a workshop on the Trans Poetics of Friendship. We go over the poetry pieces of Mia S. Willis, Golden, Cameron Awkward Rich, and Dinesh Smith.
I think I came to poetry to save my life. I found it I mean, I wrote as a kid. I wrote, and I also just told stories. Like, I didn't necessarily write them down. I was oral storyteller. I'd make it up as I go. When my niece was little, a baby, I co-raised my niece, and every night to try to get her to go to sleep, because she had a hard time going to sleep, I would make up a story, So I've just always been making up stories, and I've always loved poetry. And it turns out my great-grandmother on my father's side, my grandfather's side, too, paternal grandmother, was a poet. Great-grandmother was a poet. So, but I came to it because in 2008, I ran for city council in Portland, and somebody talked me into that. I don't know how, but they did it. And then I found Port Veritas, actually, a different form of Port Veritas, the thing that Maya runs at the North Star Cafe, and found slam, and that's exactly what my ego needed at that time, and I ran with that until I went crazy, and then took a hiatus, and then went more crazy, and then, because I didn't write, oh my God, a writer not writing, I went crazy and got sick, and then I was like, enough's enough, I need to be a writer, and now I'm in grad school for an MFA, and just trying to create as many opportunities for my friends to shine, they shine, we just need to show everybody that they shine.
Welcome back to writing.
Thank you. And Maya's one of the people that inspired me to come back, so that's another connection to people up here, so.
I mean, like most of the people here, I've always written words. I started very, very young. I mean, there's this quote by the band Modest Mouse, "Language is the liquid that we're all dissolved in." Words really sort of drive who we are, what we do, where we go, what we become. They say the person who controls the language is the one who controls the world. So being somebody who uses words is really just like another version of generating that self-power. But beyond that, I've always found writing to be an act of self-discovery. There's a lot of questions about who I am still. You probably notice my pronouns are we, us, our. There's a lot to unpack there that I won't get into. But
You're loud.
yes, I appreciate that. But the basic point at which I started getting into poetry, I would just write nonsense down, and I would put down as much just like vomit basically, and people would start asking me like, oh, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? And I would just like have to come up with meaning, and because I couldn't just like say, oh, it's just nonsense, like it has to mean something, and it sounds like a joke, but I started to discover that the more I was doing this, the more it actually did mean things. And I was discovering that I was putting down what I thought was nonsense, but it actually had mass to and related to what I was going through at any given time. Like if it was almost like communing with something, and I could just be like, if I had a question, I could just write a poem about that question, and a resolution would at least somewhat appear. It would give me an idea, a hint of where to go or who to be or what was the truth. And it's one of those things where like just writing is an act of divination. It's an act of self-discovery. It's an act of communication. Yeah, and it's just, I mean, for people who don't write poetry, I urge you to try. Just write some nonsense and then try to figure out what it means. Because the act of attributing meaning to something that doesn't have any meaning actually gives it meaning. And then suddenly you have something that actually defines you, because the meaning you gave it is meaning that comes from inside of you. And so when I put these words down on the page, my intention is to seek truth and to discover something. And I don't worry about what I want to do. I worry about what I'm going to find.
I'd say for myself, it actually started with film. I come from a family of very big movie lovers. Like that was our thing when I was growing up. And that interest ended up turning into going to undergrad for what was essentially screenwriting. So that was my first, like as a kid, I would write like every so often, but it wasn't anything tremendous. Like it was very leeward, like there wasn't a lot of structure to it. So this was like my first time actually learning like a writing style, and that it was like a domino effect. From there, I would take like prose classes, and then I'd take like journalism classes. Turns out I don't like that writing style, but I liked prose. And that led to, that and my partner led to keeping a daily journal, which I've kept for almost a decade now. And now that's kind of led me to poetry. I did like a little bit of it during my undergrad experience, but actually it wasn't really until I took workshops with Maya, so I can personally vouch where that became a lot more, what's the word I'm thinking of? Just like more supported. It became not necessarily more structured, but I got more confidence from that, more experience from that. And that's kind of ended up being, like I'll still write like in my daily journals, and I'll come up with like movie ideas and all this other kind of stuff. But now my more like intense kind of writing comes out in poetry, I suppose. So in particular, highlighting Maya and T Love for giving me platforms in order to expand that further. So yeah, a little bit more like a web of how I got here.
I want to come back to actually something I forgot to mention though, is that actually, if you look at my poetry from the North Star Cafe, I could recite some because it's memorized, all that stuff, but from Pro Veritas, when I first got on the team, whatever, back in the day, the words, all of the lyrics about being trans. And I wasn't out as trans. I'm a late bloomer as trans. I came out young as queer, well, as a teenager, but I went in the army, so I went in the closet too, you know, and then I came out again, you know, so it's been like that. But it was only, you know, during the pandemic when I was like, what the heck am I doing? I'm non-binary, duh. Like, you know, like it took me a while to get over, honestly, it took me a while to get over Brandon Tina. I had to face that I was terrified to be trans because of what happened to Brandon Tina. That happened when I was 16 years old. And my family's response to it, I've forgotten about, but their response to it was very much like, they're MAGA people. They were very hateful about it all, you know? And I remember that just being really hard for me to experience. And it really did scar me, you know? But this project actually started, Trans Poetic Archive started with me re-examining that stuff and kind of working on that. And I did some poetry on Brandon Tina. I did some poetry on this other poet from Brazil, the first published transgender poet in Brazil, Anderson Herzer. And so like, that's where the project started, you know, was with kind of like me looking in academia, being like, where am I finding anyone that I can emulate as a writer that's trans, you know, and not finding it, you know, because it's not consolidated. It's there's stuff there, but it's really, you got to work a lot to find anything. It took me a long time to find Anderson, like a lot of work. So anyway, it's not that I don't want to do that work, but I'm trying to put it all together so that it's easy to find. So when you want to find a new trans poet's coming out and wants to find a bunch of the history of trans poetry, it's there, you know.
This is really trippy because I was literally about to ask a question related to history of trans poetry.
Of course you were.
No joke. I can't believe we just did that. So, yeah, when I try to think about the historic poets, a historic trans poet, I know that I could probably get there if I thought really hard, but I can't right off the bat. And that just means like the stories aren't being told.
Right.
And I was just wondering if there are efforts to recover that history that you guys know about.
Through this project, for one thing, there's a lovely collection on 99 artifacts on trans history, so that's not emphasis on history to my understanding. It's so fascinating. I love reading the works of trans writers who go back reading from older poets who at the time identified as cis, and they're like, hold on though, can we talk about? So there's a variety of work being done. It's just a matter of like doing the work to find it and showcasing it better.
Well, and also the word wasn't trans
Exactly.
100 years ago.
Exactly.
Like I think of like Willa Cather, who's a novelist,
Yep.
but I'm like,
Yep.
that bitch is trans.
No, but absolutely. And when it comes to people,
You know,
people
like-
of the global majority and most of their cultures, they don't need the word trans because they know about the gender diversity in their cultures too. And it wasn't until colonization happened where we had to distinguish that with the language using the term trans. So there's that too.
Yeah, and I felt like a lot of novelists that were deemed women would often have male protagonists. And, you know, even if that isn't gender variant, right, it still like shows that there's an expression there. People can express gender in different ways. It doesn't have to be binary, obviously.
Right.
There's a couple of anthologies out there that are much bigger than Monster Beauties. They're part of the Trans Poetics Archive in my collection, my physical collection. Ultimately, I want to put it online too, but I'm going to keep the physical collection at the archive. And you can't check it out. You can just come look at it. You can make copies of it and whatever, but you can't just like check out. It's going to stay with the archive because I'm trying to make sure that we don't lose this stuff again because it's been lost. And that's part of the issue. Is that, you know, it's so crazy, but during the history of trans, okay, so there was oh my gosh, my brain is farting out, but there was an institute for sexuality and gender diversity, sexuality diversity and gender diversity in Germany during World War II that was targeted, and they destroyed there was 20,000 books on gender. So,
When you think of like the pictures of like the book burnings, most of those pictures came from the burning of the
There you go.
Hirschfield Institute.
there you go. Yeah. So that is like, where did it go? That's partly where it went. There was a major archive there that was lost. And so, yeah, so there's actually, We Want It All is one of the anthologies.
Yes, and it has some excerpts from the author of Stone Butch Blues as well, and reading that form of trans-Pacific history.
Yeah, the Transgender Warriors book, that one's really amazing. It's more like a history of transgender by Leslie Feinberg, Dr. Leslie Feinberg, but that book is pretty epic because it goes back to Joan of Arc, right? And talks about Joan of Arc potentially being trans. But, you know, in part of my study too, actually, you go back to even like, I'm gonna forget the book it's in right now, but there's a epic transgender hero, Canis. Are y'all familiar with that character from Greek mythology? Maybe it was in like maybe an Ovid, or no, Metamorphosis. Metamorphosis, that's the book. Anyway, a whole character, Canis, is a transgender character from back then. So, you know, but that character is never talked about so much like that. It's more like, you know, the whole story around it is really terrible, but I'm not gonna get into that right now because it could be triggering. But as all those types of stories are, excuse me, those stories are awful. I had to read them not that long ago, like all of them. Anyway,
I have a question.
yeah, I'm gonna stop talking. Someone else talk. Jeez.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So I was listening to you talking about writing and then not writing and getting sick.
Yeah.
And talking about how you cracked your egg over the pandemic. I'm really fascinated, like, with my own experience and like with friends' experiences of like shedding the responsibility for other people's feelings and being out of your egg. Like, do you notice a difference in your physical well-being? Because like I know the spiritual well-being, I know like the emotional well-being like feels very obvious for me, but I'm so fascinated about the way those things corrupt our physical body. I mean, you talked about being able to walk.
Yep, yeah.
Like that's exciting to me.
I mean, there's the sense that I'm finally in my own body. I mean, for the most part. I mean, like, just existing, just being myself, being able to move my body in the way that it wants to move is so freeing. There was something almost automaton-like about the way that I existed before. Like even doing what I'm doing now with my hands, I never would have done that before. I would have found like something, I would have like locked myself into like a place. And I think that there's something really beneficial about that. Like I finally relax, like I'm not holding on to things. I don't get ulcers anymore. I feel great. I can't eat gluten anymore, but I don't care.
Do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
Yeah, a tremendous difference, like especially with my particular transition, like a lot of it also happened like over lockdown and whatnot too, and especially in the beginning, it was a very isolated experience because of those variables, because of where we lived at the time, and also because of my selfies. That's like right in the beginning of my transition, like towards the beginning of lockdown, that's when it got like really bad for me. Like that's where the gender dysphoria, because now I was aware of it, and now I was aware of it, but now I had a name to it, and that made it so much worse. Like before you're like, yeah, something's going on, but I can ignore it, and then it builds and it builds and it builds and it builds, and then, you know, I didn't get ulcers, but like I would intentionally like hide my body. Like I would do anything I could to obscure it, to obscure perception. And even in the beginning too, and again, this might be a little TMI, but like I would worry so much as like my body was changing, how again that would be perceived by others. So like I would like tape down my chest and everything because I was like worried about like, especially being in what I considered this in between like stage, how like how that was going to interact my interaction with others. So now it's like I would have worn short overalls before or something like that. So it's just the confidence in showing off my body more, and then everything that follows by proxy from that too, of just that comfort, that confidence, and then just the lack of stress too. Like that's one of the things that holds over from like, you know, you'll examine when you're younger or something like that, of like, okay, where are these different moments of where like, hey, something might have been going on, and I think about how much stress I was holding in like my tiny body, and how like I would have hair falling out in like high school and stuff like that, and I would like nervously pick at it, and those are the ways in which like stress manifests for yourself. Like it's, and I'm sure as many people here have experienced beyond like gender dysphoria or whatever it might be, stress has a real physical toll. So that went a long way to alleviating those symptoms for me.
Oh, and the drinking. I don't drink anymore.
Yeah. Drinking and the drugs.
I don't drink anymore either.
I drank so much before I transitioned, and I transitioned and I was like, I can have a cider or two and I'm fine.
Well, what I noticed is when you're drunk, keeping a secret is kind of fun. And when you're sober, it doesn't feel the same.
Right.
It feels bad.
No, that's real. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting how that works?
It'd be like that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that my body is completely different than it was pre-transition, and I haven't taken anything to change it except for just looking at myself in the mirror every day and knowing that I'm trans, you know, and knowing it and loving it. And finding a way to like let my transness out is like really key to me right now, because I can see now the way that it worked for me is the way it works for the way that I grew up. I had no choice but to conform in many ways, and so I did that, and I hated myself for it. I still carry hate for myself for it. Clearly, it comes out like left and right. Maya's always catching me, and I appreciate it actually, because I don't want to talk like that, because I don't want you to hear me talk like that and think it's okay to talk shit about yourself. So thank you, Maya. That's a real friend, and my other friends, please do that to me too. I need help. But anyway, I was raised by MAGA people to be a girl, so I was raised by MAGA people to hate girls, and I did. I hated myself, I hated girls. Well, I didn't hate girls because I was a lesbian, so I actually was in love and infatuated with every girl I ever met, but I hated being a girl.
Someone once told me the I'm not like other girls to not a girl pipeline is very real. And I'm like, yeah, we both have been through something similar.
And so I struggle like with my femininity a lot. I injured my femininity really hard. I injured that part of me hard, and I rejected it hard. I rejected it because of the way they were forcing it on me. Like, I'm not a girl, I'm not a girl, I'm not a girl. So I just had to reject it, to the point where I struggle now, you know, and this is like day 2 of me wearing an earring. Okay, I had taken my earrings out. I used to wear very butch earrings when I was doing the butch mask, you know, butch lesbian thing, which I fell into. That's a whole nother conversation. But I would just say that it damaged me. I am underdeveloped. I'm 47 years old, you know, and most people think I'm, well, not anymore. I'm starting to have lines, but like right up until like, you know, I crossed the line of 45, people still thought I was in my early 30s. Because of my immaturity, because of the way I carry myself in the world sometimes, you know, like it's just, I'm not fully developed as a human. And I think this is really important. I don't get to develop like a regular cis hetero person. I think queer people don't get to develop like that. I think people of color don't get to develop like that, because they're not part of the structure which allows that to just this easy little transition. You know, if you conform and that feels all right for you, you don't have any problem with that, it's a lot easier for you to get by in this world. But if you get snagged on something like gender or sexuality, or, you know, that is just like, that is, there's stuff we can't even control, like we can't even have a choice about, that we get snagged on because of the way the system works. So I guess I'll just close my part with saying, and I think we should start wrapping it up. I'll close by saying that I forgot what I was gonna say, of course. So with that, we're gonna close this up, but I want you to know that we have Monster Beauty's books for sale. We just got a new order. Proceeds.
Because we sold out.
We sold out. We sold out 200 books. Like I gave away most of those.
So get your copy now.
Yeah, so get a copy now, in person, or if you can't, like, you can go online and order it. But also, make sure that you also find a way to buy all of Maya's books as well, because those are amazing. And all of these other people, write down their names. Actually, you should just get everybody to sign your little program, because this will be a keepsake for you. This is part of your Trans Poetics Archive. Get everybody to sign this for you so that you remember these poets. They're all gonna have books in a minute. So like, Maya's got a lot of books, but like everybody's gonna have a book. So you're gonna want this. So thanks for being here. Thank you, Jefferson.
Thank you, Jefferson.
And thank you, everybody else.